Orange County, and I'll be chairing this meeting today. This meeting is in person. It is important for all TSMO members to attend our meetings in person, so all committee members are asked to be present in the MetroPlan Orlando boardroom for us to have a quorum. Members of the public still will be able to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do so. There are 2 public comment points in the meetings. Members of the public attending in person will want to speak, need to fill out a comment card and give it to Rachel over here. Those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raised hand feature on the Zoom screen. We also accept comments by email and phone messages before the meeting. At this point, I don't have any comments, but at this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Eric Hill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members, in person, online. Happy New Year. I think it's the first time I've seen everyone. And I have several announcements this morning. I'll start with the TSMO master plan. It's been a few months since we've given you an update. We had to extend the project. We initially would schedule to be done actually last month. However, we had a couple changes to the scope, which has caused us to extend the timeline. But next month, we do plan to come back with a draft presentation to you. In March, we'll have another meeting with our stakeholders to close it out. And in April, I'll present the final document. The next steering committee will meet on March the 20th. I believe the time is at 1:30, Mr. Chairman. The second item is every year we do a Florida Sunshine Law refresher presentation for any new committee members. And that will be one of the common presentations that we have this morning at the TAC. So if you can hang around for that, it is beneficial. It's for your benefit, so that you don't get in any trouble and we don't violate any laws. In section 9 of the agenda, you'll see a NOFO for the Bridge Investment Program. It's due March 19th. Along with the PD&E tracking information. And there's a sheet at the table that has that information. Also at the table up front, you'll see that the MetroPlan Orlando calendars are available for you to take. And you can put that on your wall next to the ITS Florida calendar that's also on the table for people that like to continue to use calendars. This week, FDOT received a $180 million grant for truck parking in Volusia, Seminole, and Osceola counties. There will be a car fit event in St. Cloud on February the 7th. This is a partnership with the department, a Turnpike Enterprise, Safe Mobility for Life in the city of St. Cloud. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, we have 2 members. Lenny Bourdin is replacing Bruce Dogg for the city of Altamont Springs. And Chris DeLachey is replacing Brad Friel, representing GOA. Mr. DeLachey, would you raise your hand, sir? Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, that wraps up all of my announcements. I'd like to turn it over now to Mr. Mike Wilson for our safety moment.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, all. Safety moment this month is focusing on the move over law, and this is January. FDOT is focusing on that as well. So the law, as you're probably aware, has for a number of years applied to emergency vehicles. It's also applied to sanitation, utility, wreckers and towing, road and bridge maintenance. But just this year's effective January 1, it now also applies to all disabled vehicles that are either displaying a warning light or flares, or where there's people out visibly or around the vehicle. So anybody who's on the roadside and in potential risk. So it applies to all of our roads, not just limited access highways. It does not apply to pedestrians and bicyclists who are traveling along the edge or of the roadway, along the roadway. But that doesn't mean that you can't still do a nice lane change to give them that that same level of separation. So I don't have a whole lot of data for you this time. You know, these are particularly usually classified as pedestrian crashes, but the way our pedestrian crash data is configured, it's a little hard to kind of tease out how many of them are really move over related. But I'll just point out that, you know, what it is we need to focus on, and that is that if there is a vehicle and you're in that right-hand lane, you need to vacate that lane, or if you can't do that, to reduce your speed to 20 miles per hour below the posted. And a key thing I think to think about is that the earlier you can vacate that lane, the earlier the drivers behind can do so as well. Makes things easier for everybody. So that concludes my safety moment this morning.
Thank you very much, Mike. Now we'll take attendance. I'll ask Miss Rachel Frederick to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Barden,
Present.
Barkessa, Bates,
Present.
Brock,
Here.
Carson, De La Chaise,
Present.
Eid, Elisar, Elliott Moore, Gordon, Homayuni,
Present.
Horn, Hudson, Jameson,
Here.
Nelson Fadrej, Kane,
Here.
Krug, Lim,
Here.
McGrath, McDaniel, Price,
Present.
Fulham,
Here.
Richmond, Sanders,
Here.
Smith,
Present.
Tahira, Tussaud,
Here.
Wetzel, Martello for Williams, Yeager,
Present.
Yeargain.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Rachel. Now we'll hear public comments on the action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment or are joining us virtually, please use the raised hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Lisa, do we have anyone joining virtual that would like to comment?
Mr. Chair, we do not have any hands raised on the virtual side.
Rachel, do we have anybody in person that would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chair, we've received no speaker cards.
All righty then. Oh. Any written?
None, Mr. Chairman.
We've covered all the bases. We're ready to go. All right. So we have 5 action items today. Members making or seconding a motion, please state your name. The first item is approval of the December 1st, 2023 TSMO meeting minutes. Our first item is approval of the December, well, I just said that. That's on tab 1 of your agenda packets. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve, Elisar.
Great.
Second, Smith.
Okay, any discussion on that? If not, this is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. The second item is support for FDOT and Links performance management targets. For our next item is a recommendation on the annual re-support of FDOT targets for safety. Supplemental information of this item is in tab 2 of your agenda, and Mr. Alex Trauger will present this information. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, we are, as we do every January, taking up our annual support for Federal Performance Measure 1, which focuses on safety. More information on this is in tab 2 of your agendas, but as I mentioned, we take this up every year and have since 2018 as federal law is required. Performance-based planning, performance management as we know it, started in MAP 21 2 federal reauthorizations ago. It was continued in the FAST Act and further continued and actually strengthened within the bipartisan infrastructure law. So safety performance measure one is still a requirement for statewide target setting as well for MPOs to support those targets. As you can see in the second bullet, Federal Highway does look at this during our certification process and is actually going through the first planning review for looking at all targets. So we're going to be learning about that nationwide over the next couple later this year rather. And as I mentioned before, we have supported FDOT's targets for safety since 2018. That target has been 0. So there are 6 federal performance measures. There's the number and rate of fatalities, the number and rate of serious injuries, the number of non-motorized fatalities, and the number of non-motorized serious injuries, looking at our most vulnerable users. So those are the 6 performance measures. Again, since 2018, our advisory committees and board have supported 0 for the statewide target for each of these. As you can see, and as we've presented, and as you're learning about as part of each of your own municipal and county level Vision Zero action plans, some of the we're improving in some areas, but not as it relates to traffic fatalities. We're trending in the wrong direction. Obviously, we're working towards that, and you each have works going on, and you'll be hearing about that more later today. But I think that's more reason for our continued work on safety planning and action setting. So with that being said, we are requesting your approval and support today for the statewide federal performance target, which is 0 for all the performance measures listed here. On tab 2 of your agendas, you'll see the board resolution, which supports DOT in their performance planning and construction. Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much, my co-pilot. Do we have a motion for approval of the resupport?
Shad Smith, I recommend approval and support of the federal safety performance targets as presented. Kane, second.
Very good. Any discussion? Seeing none? Oh, sure.
It used to be limited to fatalities only. Have they added injuries as well, serious injuries?
No, these have been the federal performance targets from the very beginning. The focus, is always Vision Zero, eliminating traffic fatalities. But as it relates to performance-based planning, these have been the 6 performance measures since the inception of the program.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. It passes. All right, our next item is the Metro Plan Transportation Plan Amendment I-4 moving forward. FDOT to present the MPO for action. This item is a recommendation for revision to the 2045 MTP. Information is on tab 3 of your agendas, and this will be a joint presentation starting off by Ms. Catalina Chacon, followed up by Taylor DeRent. This presentation will be request for recommendation to have the 2045 MTP modified and amend to include projects related to the MFF. Please hold your questions until this presentation is finished. Go ahead, Ms. Chacon.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Catalina Chacon with the Florida Department of Transportation. So here to provide an update of what we've been doing and where we're going with this I-4 in Central Florida. And to tell you a little bit about a new team that was formed by Central Office to deliver some of the projects from the Moving Florida Forward initiative. So I'm going to tell you about our team, who we are. We wanted to have all of our team members here, but we got some last minute conflicts. Project overview and map, current status, industry, stakeholder, and outreach, what we've been doing, procurement, our next steps, construction engineering and inspection, scope and advertisement, and then we'll take some questions. So as I mentioned, we have a new team. Our new team is called Corridors Program Office, and we are a Central Office new team. It was created to ensure that we're going to streamline and have uniform and consistent delivery of 3 out of the 20 projects out of the Moving Florida Forward initiative. So our program director is Keith Slater. He is not here, but he was the director of operations out of District 1 in Bartow. And then we have Cheryl Willets out of also District 1, and she's our administrative assistant. Without her, we cannot be moving everywhere that we've been going lately, and you'll see later on my presentation. We also are hoping to hire a communications program manager, and this person is it's our PIO. We want this person also to engage with stakeholders, with the public, with our construction contractors, as well as a liaison with the MPOs, TPOs, cities, and counties that we're gonna be working with. Here with me, I have Tracy Hood right here. He is our project controls program manager. And some of our titles are in line with a phase design build contract, which is a new procurement method that was approved last year during that legislative session. And I'll tell you briefly, high level, kind of like how that works and the advantages of that type of contract. Katie Sherrard is our construction program manager. She is out of District 1. She was the corridor or the interstate program engineer out of District 1 as well from Bartow. And I failed to mention Tracy Hood comes from us from District 7 in Tampa, and he was the district consultant project management engineer. And then myself, Catalina Chacon out of District 5. I think some of you have seen me here before. I will be leading the pre-construction program tasks, and that is in essence your design tasks. Carrie Nelson so as you can see, there's only 4 of us, 5 with our admin right now, and so we're spread very thin. So we're taking all the help that we can. So Carrie's out of District 1, and she's been helping us on everything that we need help with. With the current legislative session, we are also requesting additional staff to support our team, and we envision about 10 to 15 additional FDOT staff to support the program. So here in the screen, you have the projects that we are in charge of. So we're gonna manage those projects through design and construction. We have 3 out of the 20 projects. Project 12 is the I-4 reconstruction, all within Osceola County. So that goes from Champions Gate to Osceola Parkway. Project 13 is the Poinciana Parkway Extension Connector. And then that's the new interchange with I-4 and 429. And then Project 16 is the I-4 reconstruction from US 27 to Champions Gate in Polk County. So as you can see here, we are straddling District 1, which is Polk County, District 5, which is Osceola County, and then the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, which is the Poinciana Parkway Extension Connector. So that is why our office was formed, is to make sure we have one single point of contact. Our job is to deliver the program and also make sure we're contacting all of these districts to make sure everybody's on board and supporting what we're doing. So here's the project map of the entire project that we're delivering. So the top left corner is the southern end. So we start from just west of 27 and we go north or east all the way to, we transition back to existing I-4 just near the 536 interchange in Orange County. So as you can see, we're reconstructing I-4, adding those express lanes in the median of I-4 and interchange improvements as well, including that new interchange with I-4 and Poinciana Parkway. I don't know if you can see, but there is a PDB2, PDB1 in here on the screen. As I mentioned, that's phase design build. It's a new procurement contract that allows us a lot of flexibility in the sense that you don't have to have all your right-of-way in hand, your NEPA clearances, your plans. So it allows us to get a contractor on board as early as we can. And we're planning to go with the first contract the first half of this year and start working on the designs and start getting input with stakeholders, working on your NEPA clearances, a lot of concurrent tasks to get to construction start as soon as we can. So our original plan was to do 2 phase design build contracts. The biggest one was going to be in Osceola County. And you're going to see later on in my presentation, we're pivoting from that because we've been doing a lot of stakeholder and industry outreach. We want to make sure we have competition and participation on these projects. We need industry to deliver this program. Project scope, I think you've seen this before, or some of you have seen this before. We are going to build what we said we're going to build. So the top typical section is the one in Osceola County. We are extending the express lanes in essence. We want to connect all the system on I-4, but Osceola County, 2 express lanes in each direction, reconstruction of the general use lanes, and we keep the rail corridor in the median. We have been coordinating with Brightline, so that's in the works. And then in Orange County, as I mentioned, near the 536 interchange, we're going to drop one of the express lanes in the eastbound direction. And then we're going to continue one through Orange County to connect to I-4 Ultimate near Kirkman Road. So the typical at the bottom is what you'll see in the westbound direction. Actually, that is in the works as we speak. We have 3 different contractors that are building that westbound single express lane. I want to point out that one of the biggest differences between what's built right now from I-4 Ultimate and what we're proposing is the separation type of the express lanes and the general use lanes. So we're using the tubular markers instead of the concrete barrier walls. In terms of current project status, in Osceola County, as I mentioned, we're going to come back here. We actually, from our last Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, we're thinking we're gonna come here every quarter now. We're getting ramped up. So we're gonna come back and let you know where we are, where we're going. In terms of project numbers, probably doesn't mean anything to you, but we're probably gonna add more because we wanna break it up for that participation in that competition. We have our environmental clearance that we received for the Poinciana Parkway Extension Connector last November. We're going to do a design NEPA reevaluation for the change of typical section. Our funding is in place. The only part that we are not fully funded is for the Poinciana Extension Connector for the leg that goes to Champions Gate. But as I mentioned, the procurement type, the phase design bill allows us to move ahead with design as we, in current legislative session, are requesting the additional funding that we need for the construction. The reason why we're here today for the LRTP amendment is going to go through this cycle. We'll follow by tip-step amendment, and we are also acquiring right away as we speak in Osceola County. In Polk County, I know this is not within Metro Plan, but it is adjacent to this project. We are in a very similar situation. We have a NEPA document. We will do a design reevaluation for the concept that comes out of the US 27 interchange. Working with Polk County, they wanted us to create a new overpass, Grandview. That's what you see there on the screen. And we're also acquiring right away as we speak. What are the upcoming activities? So there's the activities that are ongoing. As I mentioned, for a phase design build, we will select a contractor based on qualifications. So that's why we need to get a RFQ, request for qualifications, that's underway. We're probably gonna do also requests for proposals for justice score projects. We're working on our NEPA reevaluation, traffic documentation. We hold monthly meetings with FHWA, making sure that they have the traffic document that they need for the system as a whole. And we're working on major project requirements for this. These are major projects. Finalizing our concept plans, industry forum to reach out to industry officially, probably in a month or so. Public engagement is underway, local agency coordination as well, and our financial needs, as well as SEP 14 is a requirement from FHWA for major projects. So I talked earlier about industry and stakeholder outreach. We have been doing a soft industry outreach, if you will. Want to make sure we're meeting with the contractors that are interested in this project. So back about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, we released a YouTube video where we let industry know. So contractors and consultants interested in the project, letting them know, hey, we're coming. This is, we want to get that interest, and we wanted to start getting that feedback. So we've been meeting with I have 30 plus, but this PowerPoint was put together about a month ago, and now it's probably 40 plus consultants, contractors, or vendors that are interested in the project and bringing all the new technology that they have. We have been coordinating with the Florida Transportation Builders Association as well. And as I mentioned, FHWA, Metro Plan, stakeholders. And because of this feedback, we are pivoting to having, instead of 2 phase design build contracts, we want to propose now multiple contracts ranging from 200 to 650 million. And that is for that competition and that participation. It's gonna making sure that we're gonna have contractors that are gonna come and build this project. We need this. So we're gonna pivot from the two to various, we're finalizing those various procurements, those various contracts, and hope to have an industry forum mid-February. This is briefly about the construction, engineering, and inspection services. We are also working on this contract, and the vision for this contract is we want one contract for the entire project in Polk County and Osceola County. We want one single point of contact that's going to oversee the whole program, just to make sure that it's streamlined, consistent, they learn lessons, so that we feel that that is the most efficient way to go ahead with the CEI contract. That is on a more accelerated schedule because we want to make sure we have this CEI contract before we start procuring our construction contracts. We want to get the input as we go through the design phases. And that is all I have. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me. And Tracy.
This is Steve from Osceola County. Just excited, obviously, you know, we looking forward to it for a while, so it's good to meet the team. Tracy, nice to meet you. And we'll continue to coordinate and have those regular meetings to make
Yes,
sure we
sir.
help you, support you where we can.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, Maria Tejera from the city of Orlando. What is the tentative schedule?
So the first contract, as I mentioned, we're gonna break it up into multiple contracts. Right now, we're probably 5 contracts for the entire project limits. And the first contract will be a phase design build contract because it's the one that we can go out as fast as we can. Spring, latest fall, summer of this year. We're going fast. And by the time we advertise and execute this contract with that contractor is about 4 months. So we'll get somebody on board very fast compared to other types of contracts.
So the schedule for construction, this is the
Con-
schedule to
okay.
get someone, so the
Yeah,
schedule
for
for
construction?
construction.
So this is a 10-year program.
Okay.
Because we gotta maintain traffic and we're rebuilding the entire I-4, so it's gonna take about 10 years.
Next up, I have Taylor.
Hey, thank you very much to our FDOT partners for that presentation this morning. So now I'm here to request your action for the proposed revision to the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan to include these 3 projects into the plan itself, into our cost feasible plan. So by incorporating these 3 projects, there are no impacts to the existing project cost feasibility. So these are new funds that are being added for these projects specifically. So my suggested motion is to recommend approval of the proposed revisions to the MGP as they've been presented today. I believe the questions were all addressed by FDOT, but I'm here if you have any others.
Questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to request modification and amendment of the MTP?
Shad Smith, motion recommend approval of the proposed revisions to the 2045 MTP as presented.
All right, do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Great. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you, Taylor. Next up, we have approval of the FDOT amendment to the fiscal year 2024-28 TIP. Our 4th item is recommendation to amend the TIP, and that's found in tab 4. Mr. Sartorio, please present.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. My name is Jason Sartoria. This morning I have 3 tip amendments for you, and additional information regarding these amendments is looking in tab 4 of your agendas. The first amendment is for the Apopka Trails Connection Project. This is a trail gap project with PD&E and design phases funded in fiscal year 2024. And this project is funded through a legislative appropriation awarded to the city of Apopka. And the second and third amendments come as a result of the Moving Florida Forward initiative, which FDOT just presented on. And these two amendments advance design, right-of-way, and design build funding to achieve consistency with the FDOT 5-year work program. As I mentioned earlier, you have some additional information on these amendments located in tab 4 of your agenda. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval of the amendments. Thank you.
I have a question. I was just curious about what the limits are of the trail project. Where's that kind of going to and from?
So it's going to be West Orange Trail from Kelly Park Road to Wakava Parkway, and that's going to connect the West Orange Trail to the Neighborhood Lakes Trail.
Thank you.
Any other questions or clarifications? Pam?
And I know the numbers aren't correct. We've been struggling with this with the folks in the District 5 office trying to get this information right. We're actually doing a design. The segment is not 13.5 miles. The PD&E's already done. We're just doing the design for $500,000. And then the other $1.5 million that we got in the legislative appropriation is rolling over into the construction phase. And then we'll ask for the other $1.5 million that we need to complete the design or the construction phase is a $3 million project. So I guess I'm just a little confused about the numbers that are in there because they don't line up with what I've been working on.
So what you see here in the tip is what's currently in the DOT work program as of the legislative appropriation. So we need to have it match, but understanding that, you know, the legislative appropriation was for 2 million. The flexibility in the appropriation allowed you to flex it for design or other works. But this amendment just makes it consistent with the state's work program. We can work between now and in the board meeting to get it dialed in, but it does need to match what FDOT has in the work program so the funds can be expended.
And I understand that. I just don't want to be signed up for something that we either don't plan on doing or can't afford to do. Which is what this is implying, that this is not what we're doing, what's in here. We're only doing the design of a small segment of the West Orange Trail.
I hear what you're saying. This is just the latest we've received from DOT. It would have been really nice, you know, hear this in advance, just so we could have worked with them in advance of this action item today. We could pull this from the agenda and take it up at next month, move forward with the moving Florida forward items and work with City of Apopka and DOT over the next month. I know that project's pretty fluid. As you just explained, but we do want to make sure you're comfortable, but also make sure those funds can be spent, because if they're not in our tip, they won't even be eligible for any of the current year design work that you just referenced. But we can, that's not a critical item. We can, that was something Metro Plan staff have actually identified in our tip consistency reviews that wasn't in there, and wanting to make sure that it was there for you. But we can pull that and bring it back next month if you're not comfortable, Pam.
No, I don't really have an opinion about that. I'm just pointing out that this is not the actually correct information. I want to get the project under contract as soon as possible because we were awarded this last year. And I have time limits on, you know, when I have to have something under contract. I thought about 4 months ago that DOT had gotten this straightened out. So that's why it surprises me to see that it shows up this way. I mean, if we can go forward with it this way, that's fine, leave it. But we're not doing a PD&E, it's already been done. So.
If you're comfortable moving forward with this action, I think between now and the board meeting, we can get all the clarification needed to make sure, you know, the mayor and the other Orange County commissioners are comfortable with it. But I yield to you, Pam. It is your, you know, that what you are the direct recipient. That was a legislative appropriation, kind of outside of our process, but it does need to be a part of the tip so the funds can be spent.
So before we take a motion, were there any other questions about this? Seeing not, be looking to the city of Apopka to make a motion.
Then I would make the motion to move forward.
Okay. To move forward, okay. Do I have a second for that?
I could second.
Okay, great. Any other,
Yes.
any other discussions? Voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes. Let's see. Oh, yes, the next item is the approval of the urban boundary smoothing. Our final item is a recommendation, approval for the new urban boundary following the boundary smoothing process as found in tab 5. Mr. Alex Trogger will be presenting. Thank you.
Back up again. Pam, just before I jump into this, this action item, we'll be following up with you in DOT early next week to make sure we can get those limits dialed in. Thank you for taking that action. So another action, kind of changing gears here a little bit. We provided a detailed presentation last month during our technical advisory committee meeting about the method and approach for adjusting and smoothing our urban area boundary. As a reminder, this is an action in a process that we enter into following the census or a few years after the census, once those urban area preliminary urban area maps are released. So we've been working with FDOT and each of our local government partners who have implication or who are around the periphery. So we worked with each of those public works departments to make sure their transportation infrastructure was included within the urbanized area. And we also worked with our county's growth management, comprehensive planning departments to make sure that the urban area boundary and the adjustments that we're making are consistent to the maximum extent feasible with those local agencies' land plans, whether they're comprehensive urban and rural settlements that are identified. So again, to the maximum extent feasible, we were able to adjust the boundary consistent with the guidance, federal and state guidance, but also taking into account all the feedback we received. So last month, we talked really about steps 1 through 4. And today we are asking for your approval on this action item. Something I mentioned last month, but I think important to note here as we're taking action, this urban area boundary really is specific to transportation funding, whether that's urban transportation funds or rural. Most of the funds Metro Plan Orlando receives are urban attributable or urban area funds. So those are our TMA, we call SU or TALU or some of our carbon reduction funds that we have in our TIP. But this makes projects in areas within the urban area boundary eligible to participate financially on the federal aid system. Adding more area, as I talked about last month, adding more area doesn't bring more revenue into the region. Those formulas, those population sets are determined. So this is not a way to kind of manipulate the financial or fiscal part of the books. But I think what's most important, as we've explained in meeting with each of our local government partners, especially those with land planning authority, that this boundary does not supersede your comprehensive plans or any other service agreements that you have in place. This does not force you or to prompt any comprehensive amendment changes. So where there are areas in our region that may be identified in a county's rural area, this urban boundary does not supersede any of the agreements you have in those areas. So with that, the adjustments that we're requesting your approval on really are the byproduct of your agency's participation over the past 60 days. So with that, we are requesting your approval of the adjustments to the 2020 urbanized area. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Orange County really appreciates all the help in answering the questions that we had on this. So that went very smoothly for us. Were there questions? Okay.
So hypothetically, Alex, with no additional funding coming to the region, does this essentially mean, I know we don't compete with each other, but you now have more streets and areas competing for the same funds? So it's potentially drawing away from your urban core, trying to.
One word answer, yes, there's more facilities that are now eligible to compete for federal funds. But as you know, our prioritization process utilizes a comprehensive set of criteria, which account for urban and suburban characteristics as well. So I think it's more of an eligibility requirement. I don't think it necessarily will draw funds, but it's something to keep in mind for sure. Good point, Kelly.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this schedule?
Kane, motion to approve.
Do I hear a second? Do I
I'll
hear a
second
second?
Chad Smith.
Very good. Any other discussion on this? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Thank you very much, Alex. We do have 3 presentations and 1 item for discussion today. We'll hold all questions until the end of the presentations. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Frank Martz from the city of Altamont Springs. He's going to talk to us about Altamont's Innovation Lab and Cranes Ride. You're recognized.
Thank you very much for having me. My battle buddy, Eric Hill, has been a partner in ITS for a long time. I used to sit on this committee. I was the chair of the Transportation Tech Committee. I'm now the city manager for Altamont Springs. Navigating between Renzo Nastasian and Jerry McCullum prepared me for my current job. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces because I have not seen many of you in a long time.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Martz, some of the people in this room, they don't know who Jerry McCullough is.
I'm gonna get there. I was sitting here and I heard the words. I was looking down at my phone, checking the 8,000 emails I was getting, and I heard somebody say, the DOT person say, the tip stip, and I immediately went, wow, that's great. I remember when people at MetroPlan, not on MetroPlan, but at MetroPlan committees, thought NEPA was a word, that DDXU funding was actually XU funding that was requested by somebody named Didi. And I remember when this committee used to be called the ITS subcommittee, when people thought that was a pronoun or a contraction. And I appreciate, and I'm gonna close with a different a message to you, but I appreciate where you are today, because I can remember sitting on panels with Eric, almost 20 years ago, talking about the importance of technology and transportation, and on, believe it or not, autonomous vehicle panels, when that was a really scary concept. And I remember Mike Wilson, I had not seen in a long time. I can remember when Mike was standing at a podium at another building saying, you don't understand, pedestrian and bicycling is going to be an issue. If we don't plan for it, we're going to have safety problems. And it's taken a long time for, I think, the reality, well, maybe the moment in time of that transportation is moving over into a much more inclusive approach. Transportation disadvantage was a concept, and it had a tough time finding people to sit on the subcommittees. And I remember when MetroPlan was part of the Regional Planning Council, and there was no links. And the notion of paratransit was extraordinarily new in Central Florida. So I go back pretty far on this. I just want to say I am deeply appreciative of all of your agencies for allowing you to participate so heavily, and all of you for being as engaged in the technological opportunities for us to make people's lives better. Some of you, many of you know Simone Babb. I remember when this was her first job out of college, and I'm proud to have seen her grow as she has and become a leader in the innovation space. So I'm going to jump into where we are and share a little bit with you. But I didn't want to let the opportunity go. This is a kind of a historical reference point for me. I feel extraordinarily old, because I remember when people were going, hey, listen, we're going to start doing this thing called the I-4 Multimodal Master Plan. And it is great to see the growth of integrated planning. I will tell you, when the I-4 Multimodal Master Plan was going on, jurisdictionally, there were arguments about alignments within the right of way without any understanding that it wasn't anybody's call other than the states and the federal governments. I thought that was kind of a funny argument. But the Department of Transportation used to block projects that proposed to use design build. So everybody's moved very far down the road. So I want to thank you for that. I'm going to take you back a little bit on transit. Everybody's heard of Uber, yes? So I say this, I spoke at the Transportation Research Board last year and I said the same thing. I'll say it to you. How many of you all have taken an Uber? You know, hands, show hands, everybody, right? How many of you grew up when your parents told you not to get in the car with strangers? But what you don't know is who in this room's heard of a project called FlexBus? FlexBus was developed by the city of Altamont Springs and was one of the first demand response transportation algorithms in the United States. We got $7 million of federal funds to build out a proof of concept. And it was not controversial until we started moving into the prioritized project list. And people started going, what? You mean we're gonna have to share some of this money? And it was blocked. Now think about that. That is the concept that Lynx brought to market, or not Lynx, Uber brought to market. It was blocked. It was developed here, and it was funded by the Federal Highway Administration and FTA. And it's an extraordinary moment when you think about how close Central Florida was to breaching the market on responsive transportation. And you know, things happen, and we're a pretty resilient group. When Uber was being blocked in Florida, there was legislation to block TNCs. Now think about that. We made a partnership, the first partnership that Uber had ever made anywhere on the planet, to do not first mile, last mile, not, you know, safe ride home, to do community-wide mobility. And it took us about 3 months. We negotiated directly with Travis Kalanick, who was then the CEO. And we deployed it without telling anybody until the day we launched it. And it was a rocket ship going up in the middle of Central Florida, because the next week, so it would have been 2 days, working days later, the Florida legislature was set to vote on a bill that would ban TNCs. And that's the power of what Central Florida can do, and having the courage to move it forward. We expanded that to Longwood, Maitland, Lake Mary, and Sanford. And over a few year period, we moved 186,000 people for just $336,000. Now think about what the cost of a bus is. And Lynx has now taken the opportunity. They're growing their system, but we're seeing the real difficulty in Central Florida when we choose not to fund the most basic transportation needs. So I encourage you all to fight forward and fight for what you think is right. So we have launched an autonomous vehicle project. It is the first one of its kind in the United States. It is funded. It's the first one the DOT has ever funded over multiple years. It operates on private property, on public property. It has NHTSA certifications for its ability to operate in public spaces. And this is the first of 2 autonomous vehicle projects we're building. This is the first phase of a 3-phase project for crane rides. And the innovation of it all is really not that, you know, people forget the difference between invention and innovation. Invention is when you come up with something new. Innovation is when you take something that exists and adapt it for some other purpose or a better purpose. And that's really what autonomous vehicles are. We're using this. This is no different than things we have tried in the past. But we've launched this. It handles ADA capacity. We are going to reach into an underserved community in Seminole County called East Altamont that used to be part of Altamont, because it's important for us that there is equality. I'm going to say words that are illegal in Florida. Diversity is important. Having equal access to things and equal opportunity is important. And including a lot of people at the table is important. And those are important values to the city of Altamont Springs. And our AV system is going to demonstrate that. We're going to serve a lot of different types of people. Lenny Barden, who we were able to steal away from Kelly, is, thank you, Kelly, is working hands-on this. We've seen a remarkable increase in utility And we've not expanded it beyond our first phase test. If many of you are familiar with BEEP. BEEP is our partner in this. The Florida Department of Transportation, Eric served on the selection committee because we believe in inclusiveness, and he is the regional guy for ITS and what it can be. The importance of having different perspectives doing that selection is really a critical thing. As we start to expand this, part of our mission from DOT, part of the deal between ourselves and the state is we are one of the state's R&D locations. So we have, I think, 11 partnerships with various state agencies to do different types of research and development and deployment. This is one of them. So one of the things we will produce over the next couple of years are lessons learned, because DOT wants to take them to you and say, this could work. We learn these lessons. Here are things that we've been able to avoid or learn to avoid through crane rides. And DOT wants to move alternative transportation modes forward, and they want to do it aggressively. And any of you who would like to learn what we've done, reach out to Lenny. We'd love to have you come up and just ride it and become familiar with it. I know that I think it's called the Swan here in Orlando is an example. Of course, Lake Nona is moving forward with what is really a private sector application, but this stuff works for everybody. And eventually, at least where we're going to be in the city of Altamont Springs, as a place that has to host 95 million cars a year coming through it on I-4 and 436, we will require multimodalism. The development approved in Altamont Springs is required to participate in a mobility plan and fee that replaced impact fees. They are required to have transit coordinators. They are required to participate in mass transportation, which isn't just this. It's bicycle, it's pedestrian, it's the opportunity for micromobility and other technologies. So I'm really excited about launching this for the region. The state is really excited. Secretary Perdue. We've had some great secretaries who have really broken some molds. Secretary Prasad, if any of you knew him. Noran was very supportive. Noran Downs, Secretary Downs. But Secretary Perdue in particular has been absolutely creative in his willingness to expand what we think transportation really means. I was in DC a few weeks ago on Capitol Hill talking about the project that we have going on and the partnership we have with DOT. Secretary Perdue and I separately met with our members of our congressional delegation this week to talk about needs that we have in Central Florida to move technology and the use of technology into the public spaces. This is the area where it's going to operate. It is truly a trails to rails concept. If you're familiar with Altamont Springs, even a little, 436 and I-4, good benchmarks. To the east is Sunrail, and to the west is the Seminole Cava Trail that is one of the few coast-to-coast trail systems that you can get from one side of the state to the other. Part of this project, maybe the key part of this project, is only part of it is the autonomous vehicle stuff. The other parts of it are bicycle, protected bike lanes, and micro-mobility opportunities. It's not just bikes, but it's the opportunity for whatever comes after bikes. We're serving about $1.5 billion worth of economic development in this project. We will be working with Sunrail and our business owners to connect potential riders to use crane rides to connect between commuter rail and where they work. This entire phased plan is over 3 years. We've got about 20 more months to knock this thing out. And then we're going to move to the other one that'll be along parallel to State Road 414 in the southwest part of our city, where we're going to try to move this down into Orange County and connect into Maitland Center and connect to Seminole State College, which has some really interesting economic development opportunities as well. This type of project is going to be documented into a series of lessons learned. And we have learned a lot of lessons. Battery life, the way that ADA access makes sense on the vehicle. It accommodates it absolutely. It's the curb space that we have to think through. But the three things that are the greatest lessons learned for us, one, we learned through Uber, and two, we are discovering they are harder than we thought. When we started to partner with Uber, we had people coming into Altamont Springs City Hall going, how do I use the Uber? My kids gave me this thing they called a smartphone, but I can't use it. And how you communicate, and this is something we've done successfully, how you communicate accessibility is really key. And it's an art. And there's no real good, here's the script you follow. And every script is going to be different depending on the audience you're talking to. But that's key. You have to be able with confidence to describe what you're doing. And it can't just be me or Lenny or Bruce Doig, who's our public works director. It has to be the park ranger who's encountering parents at a park whose their kids are playing baseball and they go, hey, what the hell is this crane rise thing? You have to make sure your entire team, forward-facing team, is able to comfortably and with confidence describe the thing you're doing. So we've learned that through Uber. Two of the things that we are frankly struggling with is how do you communicate to the driver they aren't king of the road anymore? That is that we're finding that to be a difficult thing. Short of ticketing them, how do you encourage people to recognize going slower is better? That throughput at a consistent 25 miles an hour is better than an inconsistent throughput at 45 miles an hour. So everyone's personal convenience is going to be sacrificed to the greater good. And that is going to be a difficult Rubicon for us to cross, but that's one of the things the state wants us to cross. And the last thing is the role of the pedestrian in a right-of-way. We did it's another lessons learned that we're writing, and we're writing this out for the DOT. We have a police officer who is in charge of the compliance and enforcement part of this. You have to have the courage to enforce the law. So we did on Central Parkway. Anybody, I'm not going to say who's gotten a ticket in Altamont because that could be a lot, but on Central Parkway, it's a relatively straight road. It was built and designed 30 years ago. It was designed to get people from one side of I-4 to the other. And now there are a lot of pedestrians in that corridor. So we planned for both things without planning for both things together. So we did traffic enforcement, and we had police officers in plain clothes stand on the curb. They are at that time outside the right of way. The minute that their foot hits something other than a curb, they are pedestrian. They're in the right of way. And despite the fact they're not in the center of the road, they're still in the right of way. And we wrote 70, almost 80 tickets in a couple hours to people. And one guy was so upset, he refused to show his ID. What happens in Florida when you refuse to show your ID? So after he got arrested and taken to jail, he appeared before the judge, still mad that he couldn't believe he got stopped for not yielding for a pedestrian, and said, I'm not going to tell you who I am, judge. And he sent him back to jail. But you have to be willing to execute the rules that you have in place to ensure that modalities are protected. It can't just be writing tickets for speeders. It's got to be enforcing the public space. And that's one of the lessons learned we're working through right now. Our police department will produce a kind of how we got there manual at the end of our 3 phases. And this isn't a pilot. This isn't going away. This isn't 6 months. Let's see it. This is a concept for mode switch that we are going to implement as part of our transportation system. And we can't affect 95 million people. We're going to affect as many as we can inside this corridor. I also want to tell you, and I'll start to button it up. We are a founding member of a group called ACES Mobility Coalition. Our executive director is the former ITS America CEO. His name is Scott Belcher. And we are the only Florida city as a board member. We may be the only Florida. No, we're not the only Florida entity. JTA in Jacksonville is also a board member. But we're starting to advance in Congress language that would start to flex Buy America to allow on-ramping of AV systems into America. We we may be the launch point for one in North America in a couple of years that is NHTSA certified for auto crash resistance. And we're also working, workforce development is a huge thing. Blue collar, gray collar, white collar jobs are our key. We are working with an international company and several of our partners to stand up autonomous vehicle technical repair and maintenance, but also on the software side. These are good paying jobs. So I want to alert you to that if you decide you want to start moving into the autonomous vehicle space. We have a lot of resources that can help represent you in different places. And I want to also share with you what we're calling the Altamont Global Innovation Lab. It's a little bit different lab than a lot. This one is really focused on deployment and deployment using the public space. The DOT is a partner, but I'll share this with you. I think everybody knows where Altamont Springs is. We're 9.6 miles. I have talked to all of the managers in Seminole County about joining our lab, and there's good feelings for that. I've talked to my good friend Simone about partnering between the two of us and also at Seminole County as well. But our first partner who approached us asking to be a part of our lab was NASA. And we've done some other innovation in water and energy that they think may help them with their 2040 Mars planning. So Seminole County, Central Florida, is going to have a federal government partner like that advocating for us. So I encourage all of you, this is open door type of stuff. The reason this lab exists is to innovate, not to invent, but to innovate, to take things that exist and figure out ways to help the public and the community and figure out how to deploy it, to test it, to report on it, and then to advocate for it. So we've got a couple of pilots. Some of you will hear about them in the next couple of months. We have several true AI, not video game AI, true artificial intelligent applications that we've either deployed or will deploy. One of them is an AI-powered site plan review. Many of you may be adapting that. We were the first city in the United States to adopt that into our development review process. Saves about 30 to 50% of staff time just in review. And if any of you manage budgets, you know what 30 to 50% reduction in staff time focused on counting oak trees can have on your budget. We call the Global Innovation Lab Agile because that's what we are. The DOT, several federal agencies, a number of educational opportunities for STEM-based internships and externships are emerging. People are coming to us because we see government very much like Adam Smith did, the invisible hand of government. The public space is in place. And if we can create a place that's hospitable for innovators, then they will find us, and they have. In fact, we're running out of time just meeting with everybody. So I encourage you, plug into us. And if we can help connect you with people who might be able to solve a problem that you have, if we can stand beside you when you're advocating for a bless you. If we can stand beside you when you're advocating within your city or in the region or even here for an idea that you have, let us know. We'll show up. I've said this to Eric, and I'll close on this. Having sat here and been the chair of the transportation, what was then called the Transportation Technical Committee, and feeling the daunting responsibility of preparing the 2020 plan, which just is crazy, 2025. I've talked to Eric about this many, many times. All of you have the opportunity to change your communities and change the communities beside you and around you. And that requires leadership, but leadership requires courage. And that courage to say what you think is right, what you think the benefit will be, and then continuing to advocate for good ideas and finding ways for good ideas to emerge. is crucial, and you all have the opportunity to do that. And we all need to band together and sit beside each other the same way that Eric and I sit beside each other at AV things, you know, before people thought that they thought it was a robot. And having the courage to talk about there's a better way to do this. So I appreciate your time. I hope I didn't bore you. I just want to say to all of you, partnership comes in all kinds of forms, and there's not one resident that is driving along in their car, riding their bike, or walking on a trail, or taking a piece of mass transit who is saying out loud, hey, I just left Orange County and I'm in Seminole. Transportation's ubiquitous. It should be everywhere. It's not. But the people we serve don't care where they live. They only care where they're coming from and where they're going. So we should all be partners in every piece of advocacy that we can be a part of. So thank you guys for giving me a chance to kind of come home. This was pretty cool. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. You mentioned serving East Altamont. Will your autonomous service eventually use Amanda Street, or what's the plan for that, or that's still kind of up in the air?
So no, it's not really up in the air. It's I'll tell you a little bit about East Altamont that you don't know. East Altamont is a historically Black community in Seminole County. It sued the city of Altamont Springs in the 50s to de-annex because white Altamont was taxing Black Altamont and spending all the tax dollars in white Altamont. And it has been underserved every single decade until the last couple of years. It's simply been not a priority. It was a priority to us. In fact, we did a master plan in the county because no master plan had been done. And we built a park. We've improved a street called Amanda Street that Kelly had mentioned. What we're going to try to do is get across the railroad track to where the Boys and Girls Club is. The Seminole County's redeveloping a school called the Rosenwald School. And if you're interested, there's a historical movie coming that's going to be shown in Oviedo about what Rosenwald schools are. I'd encourage you, I'll send it down to Eric, and Eric, if you can send it out, I encourage you to go to it because, you know, we're going to repeat history if we don't learn about it. But the idea is that we find natural connection points to be able to serve larger capacity systems like Sunland. So we're going to try to get across the railroad track and try to reach out to Kelly, reach up to Longwood, reach down to Maitland, and try to make some logical connections. And it may not be through AV, it may be through just intended pedestrian multimodal laneage. But the answer is, Kelly, we try to reach out as far as we can. So the answer is yes to whatever you're thinking. Anybody else have any other questions? Yes. Hey, Tommy.
Because I remember that all of what you showed on that map came out of your willingness to try to solve an issue at the time for several cities along the Sunrail corridor. And that's kind of what sparked the conversation, is how do we get our folks to this station and back and forth from our business communities? And from that, you've come up with all this innovation. I applaud you for doing that.
Oh, thanks. I can tell you it is a team effort for sure. I just happen to be the loudest voice sometimes. And I don't take no for an answer very much. But I appreciate your partnership when you're in Maitland.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Frank, you mentioned some of the limitation on the vehicles, and we know it's very rapidly developing. What are your plans over your 3 years to either upgrade the vehicles you have or move into newer vehicles? Because obviously the technology is moving faster in 3 years.
So it's a good question. So we have written into our contracts that as technology evolves, we will get that new technology. So the limitation on the vehicle itself is kind of marginal on the current vehicle. The question is, how do you get higher capacity that can move from level 3 to level 4 autonomy, and to get NHTSA to certify that. And that challenge really happens in the Buy America space. There's currently no automotive grade protected chassis being manufactured in the United States. So we are working with a group in Austria to puncture the North America market, and there is some support in Congress to to create an on-ramp through probably the next transportation appropriation package. So our plan is, we're going to keep doing what we're doing and expanding as we expand. At the same time, we're going to try to get some movement on the Buy America restrictions so that we're able to get more manufacturing plant. This Austrian company wants to put $500 million in Florida. There needs to be some flexibility for them to make that CapEx. Behind them will come 2 and 3 and 5 more of those types of manufacturing plants as it becomes profitable and they can see the market growth. So we have 2 plants, Doug, one that works and one that'll work better. Don't call me Mr. Marks, call me Frank.
Frank, for your inspirational words on innovation and giving us all a piece of your courage.
All right. Hey, thank you all for having me back. That's awesome.
Excellent. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next presentation on the Unified Planning Work Program, Mr. Alex Trauger.
All right, that's a tough one to follow, especially with the Unified Planning Work Program, which for those who have been around a while, that's federal code for Metro Plan Orlando's operating budget. Federal law calls metropolitan planning organizations internal budgets, Unified Planning Work Programs. It calls their capital improvement programs, TIPs, transportation improvement programs, but one and the same to your local government's operating budget. It focuses on people, on what they're going to accomplish, and any consultant services that we may support. Federal law and some of the regulations do require us to identify milestones, work products, what we're going to accomplish, core products, things that we're certified on, but it also forces us to be transparent about the other works that we're going to do, which is really our consultant services program, which you typically hear about throughout the year. But I'll keep this pretty tight since it is a preview. Next month, we will have a document for you to see. A lot of our budget within the tasks is pretty much the same. So as I'm going through this, if you familiarize yourself with current year's budget, it'll make looking at next year's that much more straightforward. But our Unified Planning Work Program, our internal operating budget, is a 2-year product. So every even year, you will receive this presentation, and then we go back on the second year, on the odd year, and we make that update. That is a state requirement to have a 2-year work program. So as I mentioned before, it does include our planning works, what we expect from them, milestones, costs, and the funds that we are going to expend. And as you see on that third bullet there, most importantly, we have to have a UPWP so we can operate the regional planning process. Schedule, like I said, every even year we go through this process in January, where we work with DOT to make sure our revenues are consistent. We work among staff to develop the UPWP. We take it to our board at their March meeting. That is a state requirement by March 15th. We have to submit that. So our board meeting always takes place the week of that deadline. And that's our draft submittal. We submit that draft. It goes on to DOT. They check their regulations, their UPWP checklist to make sure it satisfies all their requirements. They give us concurrence, sometimes comments. We incorporate those and bring that back to our board at their May meeting to take effect July 1st, which is our fiscal year. The UPWP, sorry, our budget is organized the same way as it currently is, has 10 tasks here. As we, each of these tasks is structured to implement a core product or other works that we have that support the regional planning process. As it relates to our budget, in our accounting practices, we have a history of receiving very clean audits. Were considered low risk as it relates to the Florida Department of Transportation, and our budgeting aligns with our federal certification, which ensures that we have no corrective actions recommendations. So our work and work products are structured in a way that we're able to satisfy requirement and exceed expectation. As it relates specifically to this group and our technical advisory committee partners, these are the proposed works, especially as it relates to consultant services, that we will be working on over the next, starting July 1 and beyond. A few of the items are works that we've already kicked off within this budget that we are going to complete next year within next fiscal year's budget. The regional TSMO strategic plan, which Eric and his team are leading. Similarly, you're going to be hearing a lot more about that electric vehicle readiness study that's leading. So your group will be hearing a lot more about that. Vision Zero action plans. Our budget has a lot of federal funds, and we brought fund out of reserve to provide the local match for each of those. So our current year budget has about $5.5 million extra than it typically does. And you'll see that in a couple slides, but we do plan on completing that work in the grant effort as required by our grant agreement with Federal Highway Administration. The 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, you're going to be hearing a lot about this, especially at your upcoming meeting. I know Taylor provided a little presentation to TAC last month, but you're going to be hearing a lot about our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That's our region's 20-year long-range plan. You're familiar with our annual traffic signal retiming program in our before and after. We're going to continue that. We've actually increased funds a little bit to keep up with rising costs for labor. So we're going to be able to continue that program, and that uses our SU. So some of our urban attributable funds we bring into budget to conduct those types of engineering services. We're also going to continue our critical sidewalk bundle feasibility work to support advancing sidewalks within the DOT work program. So that's developing all the pre-work to go into design so we can satisfy all the lap intake requirements to get those projects on the books. We're also going to be have some corridor planning studies, specific segments to be determined. They're likely going to be coming from high priorities on our prioritized project list to, again, prime the pump, make sure we're advancing those priorities and making sure those projects are ready for design intake. We're going to be continuing our travel data acquisition program. That's the streetlight data that we purchased, and then we conduct a lot of different studies and at your request, supporting your local needs. The travel demand management plan, TDM plan, Eric's going to be leading that coming mid-year. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. And we're also going to be doing our next public opinion survey. We actually have a public opinion survey that's kicking off soon. You're going to be hearing about that. It's our 2024 public opinion survey. But this one is actually going to be the one that will take place in 2026. So that's another recurring product that we have to gauge public opinion on a various set of topics. As I mentioned earlier, our current year has a surge of federal funding, about $5 million from the Safe Streets and Grants for All. So you do see a little spike in federal funding there. But as it relates to fiscal 25 and 26 specifically, fiscal 26, that's more of what our typical budget looks like as it relates to federal, state, and local. We also pass funds through our budget we receive as part of the Federal Consolidated Planning Grant. Our region used to receive FTA funds and PL planning funds. A couple of years ago, those were brought together in federal law. We passed those funds through our budget into Lynx's budget through this UPWP. We also receive funds to oversee the Transportation Disadvantage Local Coordinating Board. Those are the funds that you see under the Transportation Disadvantage category. Those are passed through to Lynx as well to support their Access Links program. And you'll see the Surface Transportation Block Grant. Those are our SU funds per our board's long-range policy. We transmit $7 million within the work program to Lynx to support their transit asset management. So they're buying buses and bus stops, replacing bus stops with those funds. So these are the funds that are shown in our budget, but they are directly passed through to Lynx with this approval. So with that, I had mentioned before, this is a very light preview. Next month, you're going to have a tangible product. But as I mentioned before, it's going to look very similar to what we currently have on the books. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Well, thank you very much, Alex. We're going to move on to the final presentation, tackling the trends with tackling and tracking. How about that? With Mr. Slade Downs. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. You said I'm Slade Downs, transportation planner here, and here to tell you about updates and changes we've made to our Tracking the Trends program. So as some of you may be familiar, Tracking the Trends is a program designed to track historic data in transportation and identify emerging trends in the region. Like other MPOs, the metrics we choose to track are aligned with federal performance measures, but we go further than the federally required metrics to track just about every quality of life statistic that touches transportation. Tracking the Trends website has been revamped to be more accessible to the public. It's been streamlined to show a profile of our region as a whole, as well as selected highlights in transportation trends. You can go to our revamped and streamlined site at metroplanorlando.gov/trends. And for those of you that are interested in kind of a deeper dive past the highlights into the more granular historic data, a data clearinghouse is being created to make that information more easily accessible to all of our partners as well as the public. So that is what we have updated at the moment. I wanted to give you a preview of some other things we had coming down the pike. Our systems performance report houses those federally mandated performance measures I just mentioned. It shows how those trends have been changing over time, as well as our future targets. The technical granular data as shown in this table here related to those measures is interspersed with text and graphics to kind of give context to the data itself, as well as make it a little more easily digested to the public. For example, we've got reliability data here in this table and kind of an explanation of what travel time reliability means to the average person. And our last update to the Tracking the Trends program is our new accessibility hub. So this will allow municipal partners and citizens alike to see how accessible their neighborhood, job, city, etc. are within the context of the region. Accessibility maps are available to many different types of points of interest listed up there on the slide, as well as an overall accessibility score. So safety is an important component of all of our efforts at the moment, as you've been hearing all of our Vision Zero updates. And this is yet another example of that. In our accessibility hub, we've added safety context to show the relationship between accessibility gaps, accessible areas, and crashes and other safety metrics. And these interactive maps and analyses really help us identify where there are accessibility gaps in the region, like food deserts, transit deserts, that sort of thing. And that is all I have. I'd be happy to take questions and give just one more plug to the website. Again, it's metroplanorlando.gov/trends. Thanks.
Okay, any questions for Slade? Yes, go ahead.
Quick one for the accessibility hub. I know it said coming soon. Do you have a rough timeline, or is it when you think it might be available?
I would say probably before the next TAC-TSMO meeting. And I'm sure we will blast it out to all of you so you can all take a look.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have some common presentations with the TAC committee, the Florida Sunshine Law refresher, the 2050 MTP update kickoff, and Vision Zero status update. There are general information under tab 7. Some upcoming meetings of interest include the MPO board on Valentine's, February 14th, dress appropriately. Metropolitan Orlando Safety Summit on January 31st. The TSMO committee, February 23rd. Are there any comments that we have from members? No? Well, I have one. I want to congratulate CFX and Mr. Homiani for completing the very last segment of the Wekiva Parkway. And you had a ribbon cutting today, is that right?
Well, so the CFX portions of Wekiva were actually completed 2018, 2019. So
Yeah.
we're into the DOT portion.
Oh, it's at the DOT. I'm sorry about
Yeah,
that.
so I'll take the
You'll take the
congratulations. but I think
congrats?
we might want to extend it to-
Okay, well, that system is gonna be completed today. It started back in 2012, from what I understand, for the,
Very excited about.
I bet you are. All right, so now you can get a direct connect from I-4 to the 429. Lastly, we have public comments. If any members, let's just jump to Lisa. Do we have any virtual comments?
Mr. Chair, we do not have any hands raised on the virtual side.
Okay. Rachel, do we have any comment cards from the audience?
We've received no comment cards.
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman.
Well, with that, I will adjourn this meeting. It is 10:57 and 9:57. I'm sorry. Got to close this one out.